Hi, welcome to another session of Rooster Talk. Today I have Mike Ghasemi, who I've known for a while. Is a bit of a guru on all things technology in the retail hospitality industry. But I really want Mike to sort of give us his thoughts on the retail side of things. Mike, maybe a good moment if you introduce yourself and we can go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Noel. And thank you for inviting me to your program. As you said, my name is Mike Ghasemi. I'm the chief analyst and the founder of Mike Ghasemi Research. My focus is on retail technology, and I'm a digital evangelist and technology futurist. So what I do is I look at the technology trends and how the technology will make a difference in retail, hospitality, and travel sector.
Yeah. So in light of the current situation that we're in, I'm curious. Going post COVID, things will be different. We all know that. How long it stays different till we go back to what we know in the old world, it's another question. So what's your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, I would rather we call it a new normal than post-COVID-19, because definitely we will have a new situation in all the industries. So in regards to retail, we definitely have a new environment where the consumers are now more used to using the technology and online and digital platforms. The consumers are now more aware about social distancing, and they like to actually to shop within a very confined space than being in a crowded environment. So in this new normal, we are looking at how technology is going to make a difference, and at the same time to change the way that the brands and retailers will attract, inspire, and engage the consumers. Which means how the consumers will interact with brands, how the consumers will do their day-to-day shoppings. If you look at the past 30 or 60 days, how the impact of this COVID-19 has been on the retail sector, it's been tremendous. And but at the same time, it brought some, a very positive, impacts on the online retailing. In terms of China itself, the online retailing has grown about 30%. So during the time when the China was heavily, hit by the COVID-19, so there was almost 760 million people who were in home lockdown, and they needed to do their day-to-day, the shopping and groceries and all the other stuff that they usually do in a normal situation. So they all, are focused on online marketplaces and using online platforms to enable them to actually continue with their day-to-day life. So this is now, it's happening in other countries as well, whether it's in Southeast Asia or Australia. And you'll see that, the consumers are now focusing on finding their goods or the products over, online platforms or online channels. But coming back to basically the new normal after this current situation, obviously we will see that there is a growth in using the emerging technologies. Maybe in the past there was not much attention on augmented reality and virtual reality. It was more like an experimental project. But after this, the retailers and specifically the brands will invest on these technologies to enable the consumers to experience their products in a virtual environment. We will see a growth in robots and drones. The delivery services are going to be completely changed, because now the consumers will start, receiving goods through their doorsteps rather than going out to make basically the purchase. We'll see a huge growth in the online platform and digital platform, which actually would bring a positive growth in the digital marketing technologies. And obviously, all these different technologies will be integrated. All these technologies needs to be basically needs to be at the service of the consumers. So this would be the new situation where the online retail market would grow for sure. And right now, if you look at the China itself, we are talking about the $2 trillion industry. But when we talk about the online retailing for the rest of the world, it would be a tremendous growth, not only in terms of the spending, but also in terms of the new ecosystem, the new businesses that it will create. So this would be the new normal in the near future.
It's interesting because as you speak, you can imagine almost like one of those science fiction movies where you have robots delivering things, and you could even have robots receiving it, and can all control from your Siri or your Amazon or your Google at home. It says, pick this up, and it's all integrated, as you say, right? Although it may sound science fiction, but the reality is probably closer than we think, if this was the case.
Yes, I mean, it may sound science fiction, but the reality is already there. I mean, we do have all these technologies available. It's just that has not been really appreciated, has not been really utilized by retail industry, because they were not looking at it in a very serious way. The reason was because majority of retailers are very much used to the old classic way of engaging customers through physical channels, and they are not very used to having a crisis or a situation where the consumers are no longer coming to their stores. The consumers are avoiding to actually visit their stores, and therefore now they need to look at how they can bring robots and drones into this situation to help them to go through this crisis. So they need to look at the technology as an enabler, and they also need to understand that the technology will help them to differentiate them and to help them to actually to transform them from where they are right now into a new normal where everything is happening in online space, everything is happening in a digital space. So in this new digital space, the consumer wants to be able to experience, to purchase, to be engaged, and to have the same experience that they go through in a physical environment.
In terms of the retail side, I mean, look, I've said this many times now that the internet's been trying to tell us to do what we're talking about for 20 years. We've never really embraced it, and now we're sort of having to do this online. If this was in the old world, you and I would be sitting at your place at InnoLab there, having a conversation with a video, right? That's the old world.
Absolutely.
So now suddenly we're all forced upon working from home and things like that. And I mean, what you're saying is right, because in coming days or coming months or years, an appreciation of this is probably going to be greater than 1 month ago, say. And an investment into making this work would be of greater significance than, say, a month ago. And retail is a very interesting thing, because we've been talking about, like what you touched on, augmented stuff and all this virtual reality, which is really works really well on the retail side.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the impact of social distancing in future, I don't think that people start going back to those good old days that they're mixing together, they go to a crowded space, and they wouldn't mind to actually to shop where there are many people around them. So the social distancing itself will drive consumer into the digital platforms. People who never once used a service or an online service, they start, looking at how they can actually purchase the product without they physically go to that space and touch the items or touch the products, because now they're fully aware that any physical interactions with anyone, whether it's with the storekeepers or with the people who are in that space, will pose them into a new risk of infection with kind of a new virus. So therefore, with this new normal and with the consumer awareness about the social distancing, there will be more and more consumers going and shifting to a digital platforms. When we talk about digital platform, we are not just talking about using an online e-commerce system or online e-commerce platform. We are talking about whole lots of different technologies that would be required to serve the consumers. We are talking about the delivery systems, the supply chain systems, the digital marketing platforms, the payment systems, and there are so many other things that is required to actually to make that single transaction consistent, seamless, and easy, and at the same time convenient for the consumers.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, Mike, I mean, fantastic. I'm glad we agreed to have this chat. I think it's something that people sort of, I think a lot of people still think, we when this is over, we find the vaccine, everything else, then we're going to go back to the old norm. But I do think that people will have a different way of thinking now, because if you remember in 2015, there's this video has been sort of going around that Bill Gates did the TED talk, right? And he said, this could happen, and nothing happened because everyone thought, this is just a talk. And today, 5 years later, we're faced with exactly what he's talking about. So I think in the coming years, this will be in the back of our minds for a long time, and the acceptance of the possibility of this happening again would be higher in some ways. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we had this conversation a few days ago with some of our colleagues, that most businesses in the past, they were not built for a crisis. They were not built for to facing this kind of situation. So they were built for a good, peaceful time. Now, after this, when we are moving to a new normal, so most businesses are going to be fully aware that they need to have the crisis plan. They need to have the readiness to continue with their business during a crisis, because most businesses are basically focusing very much on how to actually engage the consumers and how to sell the products, but they never had this even in their dreams, that one day they have to literally shut down the business because they are not, there won't be any consumers and they won't be able to actually to serve the customers. So yeah, definitely this would last for a longer period on their mind, and they would make them, to be more aware about what if, we will face a new situation like this.
yeah, it's just like what we were just discussing before we started the session, that, because of this, there's 6 conferences that you can't get yourself to, which you normally would do in doing all your talks and things like that. It's not going to happen now, so.
No, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
all those conferences that I was supposed to actually to speak and to present this year has been already canceled. And now we have the border lockdown, so we are not able even to travel out of Australia. So we are here for good. And that's why I started to actually to focus on how we can help the businesses in Western Australia specifically to get back to their day-to-day operation. And one of the initiatives that we recently launched, and it was a very quick project that we completed, is an online ordering system for the cafe and the restaurant, because we realized that the existing online channels are charging them a very high rate of the transaction fees, and therefore most cafe and restaurants, they can't afford to use those platforms. So we decided to build a similar platform, and currently we actually offer them for free for 60 days. So which means the cafe and restaurants, they can actually use InnoLab online ordering platform, and they can connect to the consumers and able to sell as their usual or ordinary days. And on top of that, we also plan to launch a CRM system, because again, most retailers, they ignore the fact that they need to be engaged with their shoppers, with their consumers, with their customers during the rainy days. So the CRM will help them to engage the customers and to communicate with them, and enable to still continue having certain level of transaction with the customer. So these are some of the initiatives that I decided to do while I'm here and not be able to travel or speak at conferences.
All right, Mike, thank you for your time. I'll make sure I have all your details associated with the video. So if anyone has any questions about what you've just talked about, they're free to give you a contact there. But
yep,
Mike, thank you for giving me time, and stay safe, and we'll have another time.
Yep, come over for a coffee. No one is here.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.